Welcome to PI Perspectives. Matt is back at it again today with Wes Beardon from the Beardon Investigative Agency out of Dallas, Texas. Wes, who also is an attorney, has offices in Houston, Texas, and New Orleans. Wes drops by the studio to talk about corporate investigations and high net worth investigations. The guys also discuss the National Council of Investigation and Security Services. Wes currently serves as the first vice president of this great nonprofit organization. This episode is brought to you by our new sponsor, CrossTrax Case Management Software. CrossTrax is case management software that is built by investigators for investigators. The robust features allows organizations to manage any size caseload. The system can be customized for all types of cases, including criminal defense, process service, domestics, backgrounds, surveillance, and more. Start your free trial today at crosstrax.co. Not .com, but crosstrax.co. And use promo code PIP20 to receive your second month free. Let's drop in with the guys and get down to this week's business. Here's your host, private investigator Matt Spare.
And welcome to the next episode of PI Perspectives. I want to thank everybody for joining us today and tuning in. I'm sitting down here today with a good friend of mine, Wes Beardon from Beardon Investigative Agency from Texas. Wes is here in New York, and I'm like, drop in, pal, and you're going to be on my show. So thanks for joining me here today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
We're not over the phone today. We're actually sitting across from one another, so that makes things easier. So Wes actually operates out of Dallas, Houston, and in New Orleans, Louisiana. Correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so family-owned business, right?
Family-owned. My father started it in 1972, and we've been doing it ever since. So I'm the only family member still involved in it, but some of us have always been involved in it one way or the other.
Right.
And that's what we've been doing. We've been doing it for a long time. That company's changed over 50 years, like any company, So but where we're at now, we love it, and we keep at it. So
it's funny. I have small children, right? So I have 4 kids, and they're 8 and under, but they're already in it. Right, they're already they know all what Daddy does, and I write some articles. My oldest is actually reading them. I was in a book recently. I wrote a chapter for it, and he just grabbed my book and started reading it. I'm like, all right, some of the other chapters talk about murder, so we can slowly roll there, pal.
Well, yeah, I like I told you earlier, I've been doing this since I was 16 years old, and sometimes voluntarily, sometimes by coercion. But yeah, exactly. Family is cheap labor, but that's probably where my love came of it. Sure. And I really had a love of this, and it's probably it is my passion by far. So
yeah, and your dad was an interesting guy. You were telling me. So former CIA.
Yeah, he worked for the CIA. Got recruited right out of college. Wound up working for them for a few years, but really didn't have an interest in working for the government. So he kind of left there, right. And began getting hired by a number of people who would call him up just to get him to get involved in cases. Right. One of those was the Watergate case. He interviewed a couple of witnesses in that case, and then he wound up getting into some very high-profile cases in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Right. Worked for Racehorse Haynes for many years, and several other very prominent criminal defense lawyers there. And then one thing led to another, and just kind of ballooned.
That's great. In 72, right? That's when he started, 1972. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I was born the year after. So I wasn't even around. That's cool. You decided at some point, I guess, that this is what you wanted to do, right? How did that work out?
Yeah, well, like I said, I'd always been in it since I was a kid. I worked my way through college doing it. And, everything from doing surveillances to backgrounds to interviews to everything. And then I went, I got my law degree, and I became a lawyer. And I'll remember this. My dad's been dead now for about 8-9 years, and he brought me in. He said, "Now listen, now that you have your law degree, go practice law for about 3 or 4 years. Try a whole bunch of cases. You'll hate it, and then after that, come back and have some fun."
Right.
And he was right.
Yeah.
And so I did that. Now I actually am still trying cases today.
Do you still hate it?
No, actually, I found a good happy medium between being a lawyer and being an investigator. Okay. And it's this last probably 3 or 4 years has really come into its own, and it's really gotten to where it's a good balance for me and my company, my family, and everything. So
I never really realized how many investigators have that lawyer background. I know a couple, but it seems the more that I branch out to different association events, and I travel different areas. I'm actually meeting other guys that are attorneys also, and it's impressive.
Yeah, that used to not be the case, but now you're right. There are probably it's probably a couple of handfuls of people. Maybe I can't think of more than 10 or 15, or so. But yeah, it's a great skill. I find it's highly demand for clients. I mean, everything I do, I can't think of any case that we have right now or that we haven't had in the last year or two that hasn't gone to some type of adjudication, whether it's a trial or in front of a judge or in front of a government committee. And so just having that background, understand how the evidence works, understand how to argue that. It
legitimately
helps.
give legal advice. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and you can see those things coming too. And there's a plus and minus to giving legal advice, Sometimes you'll get a lot of friends once you get that law degree and that you didn't know you had.
How's your liability insurance?
As high as I can get it.
That's great. So your firm right now, we were talking about this, and you're not the only attorney in house, right? You have other.
No, we have about 4 attorneys right now, and most of those are guys doing investigations, guys and gals are doing investigation, and some of them actually still try cases too. But even in the cases that we take as lawyers, they're fact investigative intensive. They're cases where the facts are going to matter. Right. I mean, they're going to really matter, and so that's why we're getting hired, basically.
So do you market and solicit cases as an attorney and then keep it in-house doing the investigative work? Or is it more along the lines that a client is coming to you and there's just a legal aspect that's needed within the investigation?
Yeah, it's funny. Not for many years. I mean, our investigation, we're a full-service group, so we do everything from background checks. We have a TSCM group that goes out and does sweeps. Surveillances, all of that. Right. But I think after I became a lawyer, I started getting more and more calls by other lawyers. Really is the majority of how I get my cases, who wanted to co-counsel with me. Okay. And affiliate me within a case. It was a large case, whether we were a plaintiff or defense or whoever we represented, doesn't really matter. But that's really how I've been getting most of my business. We do advertising, we do marketing, and we reach out to, but most of where I get a good bulk of my business is really from either big companies or lawyers.
Right, and do you find that your work is specific to the Texas area or Houston, or you find yourself working all over the country?
Now I'm finding myself all over the place. That ebbs and flows over a period of time. I mean, obviously Dallas is our home. It's our biggest office by far, and we do the most work out of there. But no, I mean, I can tell you now, I've got cases in right now several states here in the United States. I've probably around 6 or 8 states, and then we've got 2 or 3 cases in Europe right now, and 1 in South America that we're working. So it's all over the place. Okay. There's not one place. So
give me an example of something interesting that you guys have worked on. Don't violate any
that's very difficult for me to do. I've got more confidentiality laws than I can shake, but I knew you were going to ask that, and I have now resigned myself to say Tuesday, because every week, I think you probably get this too, every week is an interesting case. Yeah. And sometimes you go through and you go, wow, that's really interesting, but this is your job, and if it's your job, you're doing this and you're working as hard as you can at it. And I hate to say this, you go a week and you forget about that case, and then another interesting one comes along, but in terms of what's interesting, I mean, we have, we're doing a lot of healthcare fraud right now. That I don't know is as interesting as somebody wants to listen to, listening to us make it, wow, that's riveting. Right. But that is riveting to me because it is, the federal government is just bringing these cases left and right now. It's very interesting, type cases. We do a ton of family law in Dallas.
So you're talking about healthcare fraud. I dabbled in that just a little bit a few years ago. I had a plaintiff law firm I do business with that one of the associates there did pro bono work, right? So he would volunteer to do work with the federal court and criminal court, right? So he contacted me one day. He said, hey, I have this case I'm working on. It's very interesting. I need you to come in and let's talk about it. So I went in and sat down with him, and apparently it was one of these chiropractic facilities, doctor, lawyer, ambulance chasing, like this whole thing going on. And this woman was arrested, and she got caught up in this chain of all these doctors and lawyers that were doing things they shouldn't have been doing. Her biggest complaint, or her biggest problem with this issue of what she was arrested for, was she took money, right? So they were essentially paying her to treat at a particular facility. And it was very interesting because she was poor, right? And what was also very interesting is she had a legitimate injury. Like, she had herniations in her back and all this. But the fact that they offered her, I think it was like $500 or $1,000 to go treat at this particular facility was a big problem, right? And she ended up doing time in jail. And it was amazing, right? So this guy, he hired me to go track down people that worked at that facility. And it was very interesting working for the federal government on that end, because I had to like put a proposal through what my hourly is, what I projected it to be, and the judge actually had to prove it. So they had to like sign off to say, yes, okay, we'll pay your retainer fee or whatever
to do that,
right? Which was cool because I knew I'd get paid eventually, right? But it was so interesting, and she ended up taking the plea, and it's like she really wasn't wrong. I mean, she did take the money, but if you look at somebody who's in that situation, right? They're poor. I mean, there was no doubt about it. She was struggling. She was living in the projects and doing whatever. And it's like, I think it was around the holiday times or something. And she was saying like, I just wanted to get that TV for Christmas. It's like, wow, you did time over a TV.
Well, it's, I hate to say it. Why it's interesting to me right now is that the government just wields so much power. You said, she didn't know what's going on. I hate to say this, the federal government doesn't know what's going on. Right. Many times they bring these cases and I don't think they understand what the kickback is. They may suspect that there is a kickback. Right. They may suspect that it's violation. And another real problem with it is that the criminal law around it with this healthcare is Byzantine. I mean, it is. It will take you $100,000 and a team of lawyers to figure out if your little company, who is a pharmacist or a doctor or whatever, actually broke the law.
Right.
And then when you figure that out, and then you spent that money, then you got to figure out how to do your defense, which might be 10 times that. And it's crazy. And it's really a lot of power the government has. Are they using it the right way? I hope so.
Yeah.
Do I know that? I've seen a lot of cases they may not have. So
right.
It's crazy.
Translation to all you investigators out there: have liability insurance.
Yeah.
And keep it up to date.
That's right. But that's what, those type things are what we get hired on. We do some criminal defense. It's mostly white-collar criminal defense. We do a lot of civil litigation. But a lot of the reason we get hired is to know where the line is, and not only know where that line is, but walk up to that line, maybe even lean over the line, but know exactly where it is,
right.
And what we can and can't do, what will come into evidence.
Right. That's great. Okay, so we're going to jump out real quick and take a sponsor break. When we come back in, I want to talk to you a little bit more about your business and some of the work that you do, and then I want to jump into NCIS. You are on the board of that association, so I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. So we're going to step out real quick. We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Satellite Investigations, the leading investigation firm in New York City. If you have any investigative work you need done in New York State, please reach out to Satellite at satellitepi.com.
And welcome back to PI Perspectives. This is your host, Matt Spare. I am here today with Wes Beardon from the Beardon Investigative Agency. Welcome back, Wes.
Thanks for having me.
Good. Okay, so we were talking about that nasty Medicare fraud and all that loveliness before we jumped out.
Riveting, isn't
riveting,
it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's real riveting. I know there was another issue we were working on together. You had contacted me with a major corporation that was trying to hunt down people with regards to like a recall of one of their products.
Oh yeah,
and that was an interesting thing too, right? We're doing the door knocking and.
Oh yeah. We I'm sure there's some investigators listening here because we had been hired to help a major manufacturer really deal with their recall litigation, and not so much their litigation, but with from the government. The government had come down on them on some of these bags, and everybody knows what the bags are. The Takata airbags.
You're talking about airbags,
yeah. And Takata made airbags for everybody, and so we have now been. I think this is our third year almost now of going in and locating people who own these airbags to get them fixed.
Yeah.
First off, I was impressed that the clients would actually do that. I think the government's pushing them to do it, but many of these clients are doing it themselves,
right,
to get people. They don't want to have another injury. Basically, they don't want to see anybody injured. And we talked about those vehicles. I mean, I think we've located, I don't know how many this last round, probably 4,000 different vehicles throughout the United States, and owners, and actually made real contact with them.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine that? I didn't even think that was even possible.
Right. It's amazing, right?
Yeah, it really is. I mean,
and then you got to stick to a budget too, which is the more amazing thing.
That's right. That's right. No matter how big a case you get, there's always somebody in a back office who's going to write that check and say how much.
Yeah.
So
Tell that Beardon guy he's crazy.
Exactly.
Oh, sir. Right. All right. So some of the other clientele you deal with, high net worth individuals we talked about, and also violations of non-compete. Like, how do you do that type of investigations?
Well, that's very interesting. And right now it's a big time where that stuff is going on with these company investigations, these due diligence. I mean, companies are bought and sold every day.
Right.
And sometimes these companies are mom and pop shops downstairs that, are bought for $100,000. And sometimes they're bought for $100 million. And when you do that, it's done by contract, and there's all sorts of ways those can be violated. And a lot of times what we find is, an individual will go to buy a business, and before he buys the business, he'll hire us to check that business out, because he's buying the whole thing. He's not buying just the money, but he's buying all the hickeys and the fact that the vice president is currently being indicted, or that, that they're being sued for X, Y, and Z.
Sounds like he's got problems.
Yeah, but that may still be a good business.
Right.
I mean,
now's the time to sell.
Now's the time to sell. You may be in a buyer's market, but and then you'll find that even the buyer may or the seller may come back into business. We find that all the time. In huge, $100 million businesses, we find people who will sell a business, and because particularly in technology, and will sell a business, and after they sell it, they'll go back and get in business again and compete against the guy they sold it to, even though they're not supposed to, with their brother-in-law or somebody. That happens all the time. And so we do everything from surveillance. We do detailed backgrounds. One of the most interesting cases I had was a company that had been bought for I think it was right at $170 million, and this was years ago. People had sold it to another group. And they started in business against them. It was a technology business. Yeah. And they were so careful that they set up fake offices all over the country. And they would work from home. And they had their own phone lines, and they had a front guy.
So it's a boiler room thing going on here.
No, it is. And so what we did, if we have a minute, is we had investigators from all over the country would go and pick the trash up.
Yeah.
And they pick it up from their houses, and they would ship it to Dallas. And in Dallas, we had all these documents that had been shredded. So they were shredding it, but they weren't cross-cut, just regular shredding. Right. And we hired a group of guys, and they would come in at night, and they would start about 5 o'clock. We provided them all the drinks they wanted, all the food they wanted, and they would put these documents back together, one by one.
That's a lot of barbecue.
That's a lot of barbecue. I think we wound up. We were impressed with ourselves when we were getting the trash at like 20 pages a day or something like that. But they would call it game night.
Sure, right.
Because it was like a game, and that's what they did. So.
That is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So it's Tuesday. I got that story out of you.
Yeah, exactly.
It literally is Tuesday. That's cool, man.
Mm-hmm.
The net worth cases. What's that like? What do you typically get hired to do for the high net worth individual?
Well, I think when a high net worth individual calls and hires you, you can kind of categorize it in 2 or 3 types. I call it family law, but I will tell you, they didn't get high net worth by sitting around.
Right.
They were people usually who were pretty active in their careers. They were out traveling. They may not have been home with their kids. They may not have been home with their wife or spouse. And so they get into issues where they don't know what's going on in their family. Okay. And so we deal with that a lot of times. Whether it's their children have had issues, whether it's they're having marital issues or head into a divorce. Mm-hmm. In Texas, particularly, divorce is big business. It's where the big daddy warbucks gets taken to the courthouse. It doesn't happen anywhere else but there, maybe LA, maybe here in New York.
Right. No comment.
But that happens quite a bit. But they are also, making investments. They're trying to determine how they're going to use their money the right way, who to be with, who they trust or they don't. I mean, it's like anything. You garner fame and money. People tend to come around you, and sometimes those people aren't genuine.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Yeah, I get you, and I'm sure. Those checks don't bounce, right?
Well, you hope not,
exactly.
because usually it's a lot of work. And
yeah, that's cool. Okay, so let's jump into the NCIS. That
Sure.
is the one of the reasons actually I wanted to have you in here. So you serve on that board, right? So for the lay people, why don't you explain the association, what it is, what it does, and what its goals are going forward?
Sure, yeah. NCIS is National Council of Investigative Security Services, and our main purpose, we're a national association of private investigators, and the vast majority of our members are private investigators. And, our main purpose is really lobbying. It's government representation, primarily in Washington, D.C., but we also monitor every state. We provide kind of a support to each state association. The big states, obviously, they have their own, right? New York, California, Florida, Texas, but there are a lot of smaller states that don't have that backbone. They don't have the training. They don't have the money for a lobbyist, and so we also assist them in that. So that's really what we do. Kind of moving forward, our goal is really to start not merging. I hate to use that word, but really integrating the national and state associations so they're working a little bit better hand in hand. And we've already started doing that,
right?
And with our legislative advisory board, which we've had a tremendous success with. And if you're listening, you're a member of a state association and they're a member of NCIS, generally we have about 4 times a year a conference call with their members and with our lobbyists, and we sit down and we talk about types of laws or issues that are coming up that we need to be aware of, and we need to try to deal with or get in front of, so that it protects our profession. Yeah,
I mean, data privacy is the hot button here, right? It's the life's blood for us, right? If we're not able to get information anymore, or we're highly regulated, it's going to make our lives a lot more difficult. And it's crazy. I did go down to Washington D.C. for the yearly meeting, and I was so impressed, not only with everybody in the association I met, but just the lobbyist Keith was fantastic in explaining everything, and it was there's something cool to the Hit the Hill event, right?
There is. It's you know what? It's neat going to where your capital is. Yeah. It's neat actually participating in the process, walking through the hallways and doing a little sightseeing while you're trying to do a little lobbying as well.
I was banging down doors, man. People I'm like, okay, I have 1 or 2 scheduled appointments, but I'm going to go see as many people as I can. And, people think if they speak to the actual representative that's the win. Mm-hmm. It really isn't, right?
No.
Speaking to their people is the win.
No, let me tell you, many times, they're politicians, God bless them. So you'd be surprised they'll tell you anything. But their staff members are really the ones who do all the bulk of the work. And getting to know a staff member sometimes can be a godsend. I mean, they can tell you what's coming down the pike, how to argue what you want, how to get in front of them, and so on and so forth. So, the staff members sometimes are more important than the legislators. I hate to say that. But
it's true. Yeah, it's really true. And, having that relationship, I know I traded a bunch of emails with people from New York after that. And it was really cool. It was really cool. I was able to get in, I think I see about 6 people.
Yeah, that's good.
So, and what was weird about the whole thing is there wasn't really anything pressing right now. So there are some issues with data that are coming down the pipe, right? Mm-hmm. And we're almost like we're being proactive, which is great because most of these associations are reactive. NCIS is actually proactive, which is awesome.
That's right. Yeah, we're trying to get in front of it. But and I can't tell you how important that is just to get in front of them, because when you go into these deals, they don't have an idea what a private investigator is. So when you say I'm a private investigator, they think, who? Yeah. Well, what do you do? I didn't
Magnum.
Yeah, right.
Relax.
Exactly. So, part of what we're trying to do, and what we're trying to do at NCIS just as a whole, is just tell people we have a place. Right. We are part of the justice system here.
Yeah.
Whether it's civil, whether it's criminal, the police have their place, defense lawyers have theirs, prosecutors have theirs. We have a place in the system as well, and so that's why we're here, and that's what we do. And just explaining to them the good things that you do is extraordinarily important.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest misconceptions that I was coming across that these folks have is they're under the impression that we're data brokers, right? All we do is we just run our database searches and we resell the information to everybody. And that's what their constituents are complaining about.
Right.
But it's like, no, we don't do that. We're highly regulated. We get audited all the time. Like we have to, there are certain guidelines that we have to abide by. And it isn't one of this, download and sell to whoever is going to buy it situations. And they don't realize that, So being able to have that conversation with them face to face, educating them, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm Matt. This is what I'm here about. And this is what I do. It makes a difference.
Right.
It really does. I walked away from that hit the hill, just really impressed. And I went right back to my state association. I was like on fire. It's like, check out everybody. This is what we did.
Well, I can't tell you how important that is. And if people are listening, we really want you guys to come to us. Because, and I mean, as you do this business for as many years, unfortunately, as I've done it, you get cases that may be interesting to you, but healthcare fraud just doesn't ruffle anybody's feather. But there are guys out there now who are, chasing down somebody's lost child and reuniting somebody who's been lost for many years. I talked to an investigator this morning who was dealing with a case where two women had been switched at birth. In a hospital. Wow. Those are the types of cases that, frankly, make us look great. And we want you to bring them to us, and we want to talk about them. And a lot of those cases you get within your first 5 years of startup because you take anything that'll come in the front door, and a lot of times they're phenomenal cases.
You don't know what you have until you have it. And it's like one of those things where you start going there, and you're like, wow, like this is crazy. And that's one of the things you get when you graduate from field work, right? When you take yourself out as the owner of the business, say, okay, I'm going to be the president now instead of the field investigator. It's like you lose those stories.
You do. You really do. I mean, I hate to say that, but that's just one of the things that happen. So
I'll take it.
Yeah.
It's someone else's turn.
Right. And then you realize it's sweating in a car all day is not a great deal either.
Yeah. So. Well, listening to podcasts, yay. That's a good thing.
Right.
So NCIS, it's really an integral part, right? So I love the way you guys advertise, right? That it's not only being a part of your state association, because that's an important part too. It's almost like that 2-ticket system, right?
It is.
You got to basically go hand in hand. And one of the initiatives that you guys have on your board, I noticed when I sat in on the meeting, was that real push to have the state associations involved, right? So there were state associations that were involved and maybe fell off a little bit. New York came back. That was one of our things that we were looking to do, and really working together to support your state association, but also have it as part of a collective that now everyone can work together in different regions. I thought was really neat.
Yeah. Well, what we're finding, and I'll just, if you're a part of a state association, I'd really encourage you to get involved with us, because what we find, and in fact, there was an article on USA Today about it, is that, legislation in Wisconsin is almost identical to the legislation in New Mexico.
Right.
On whatever issue.
They just cut and paste. That's crazy.
That's a lot of what's going on. Yeah. And one of the reasons for the Legislative Advisory Board and getting these state associations involved is to get everybody on the phone. And for instance, the most recent one, I had little to do with it. I let the states talk about it, and it was great. Some states said, hey, we're fighting this battle and we're winning. Other states said, well, we're fighting this battle. Can you help us and send us a letter of support? And can you help us? How did y'all win that? And so it's been a really kind of a great thing. It's something we're going to continue doing, I believe, and I think it could have some real success down the road as we get these battles. Data privacy doesn't matter where you're at,
right?
Does it? I mean, it's really the same issues.
It's important, and you bring up a good point, right? These states feed off of one another. Legislative wise, right? So a state officials say, well, we're looking to see what they do in California, and whatever they do over there, we're going to adopt that.
Right.
And that happens.
It does. Yeah. California had a very big victory recently with the Uber bill, which was a deal that would prevent independent contracting. Let me tell you, that could have killed our business as private investigators, particularly for people who are working for different investigators as kind of subcontractors. It would have just absolutely killed it.
Slippery slope, man. How many hours a week are you working? Are you really a full-time employee or a 1099, it is, and it's a hand grenade, bro.
Right, and some of these states want you to be a full-time employee so that you receive the benefits of full-time employment.
Right,
and that's going to be hard for us to do.
Translation: They want your taxes.
Yeah, they want anything they can get.
Payroll taxes.
That's exactly right.
So it's interesting to see how it works, because they do feed off of one another, and that's why it's so important to have your advocate on the other end. we all need to stick together and do it. So I've been really impressed what I've seen. So you're currently serving as the first vice president
yes,
of the
sir.
association.
Yes, sir. And then I run for president here in about 3 months in South Carolina. So we're going to be doing our convention this year, our annual meeting, really, with the South Carolina Scallies convention. A great bunch of guys and gals, great conference, Myrtle Beach, which is a beautiful place to be in spring. So we'll see how that goes.
I'm not angry about that. My wife maybe a little bit,
but yeah, it's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good time. So I think, and we'll see. We've got a lot of things planned for the next year. I mean, as an individual, guys, I'd really try to encourage you to join because, not only do you get that association support, but what also is you get to see what the laws are coming down the pike. And if you know a little bit more, I mean, if you're going to be in the game for real, you need to be in the game and know the law.
Yeah.
And so we do a very good job at educating our own members. Hey, this is out there.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. Here's what it's going to look like.
So what folks don't realize either is that it's a great sales pitch. When you're out trying to get business, right? When you're having that sales meeting, it's like, okay, well, what credibility do you have? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm a member of this association, that association, and I'm the National Association. That's kind of like your state association that advocates for your rights. So like in New York, it's the New York State Trial Lawyers Association, right? So I am a member of an organization that's similar to that, but we do it on a national basis, right? So the lobbyist that you have up in Albany, that's advocating for your rights. I have a lobbyist too, but he's down in Washington D.C.
right,
doing that thing. So it's almost like it gives you credibility. And even when you're testifying on the stand, lay down your foundation of, why you're there. Well, I'm familiar with the law and the rules because I'm a part of this association and I'm heavily involved.
Right. Yeah. And I think that the other thing too about NCIS that's good, in your state association, you're depending on how big your state is, but I'm in Texas, and I'll tell you, I don't know that I get a lot of work from Texas because we all have known each other for so long. We all, if I need somebody in El Paso, I know who to call.
Right.
And your national association is pretty good because, I mean, really, I see every day on our lists or work being swapped around, our questions being answered. Hey, how do I get a New Hampshire driver's license, or how do I get a driving history out of Montana, or just basic things like that. And that's invaluable when you need it at the last minute. So.
Yeah, the listserv on NCISS is strong. There's just no other way to put it, man. It's impressive.
Yeah.
And I've seen some associations that have good ones and some that don't. I feel this one is actually a good one. You don't really see nonsense go
right, and you usually see something every couple of days or something on there,
Yeah, and there is that call to action, legislative one that goes out, but there is hey, I need somebody to cover this. I got a surveillance in Vermont, there was something today, like a 16-hour surveillance in New Jersey somebody was looking for. It's like, oh, okay, all right, that's good. You can get work out of it too. So there is value on that. I've been really, the more and more I get involved, and I've been a member for a long time, but I never actually went down to hit the hill. And, I made a conscious decision because, being on the board of my state association in New York, and as I'm starting to kind of go up the food chain, it's like, oh, okay, I'm a second VP now. I should probably get involved with some of these national associations and represent New York.
Yeah.
But it's been great. I like I said, I came home from Washington. I was on fire. It was like really cool.
Well, and it's just one of those things. I mean, associations. I mean, if you don't have a meeting, if you're not, or hit the hill, or a chance to interact with people, it's not an association.
Right.
You can join anything you want.
Right.
But you really, and I would any state association as well. I mean, get involved. If you get involved, you'll make lifelong friends.
Yeah.
You'll have people that who will pick the phone up for you when you have that major case in some area. It just happened to me about a week ago.
Right.
Outside of LA, I needed something, and somebody who's a lifelong friend got me taken care of.
Right.
So we've got to you've got to really get involved in the associations. That's the bigger benefit,
Right.
than anything else you could get online.
No, you're absolutely right. And showing up and being present. So it's not only pay your dues and join the association, but actually go to the event.
Yeah.
And it is a sacrifice. I get it. You got to fly somewhere. You got to take a couple of days off from work to do it. But what you get out of it, it's more than just what you're learning there, right? We had talked about that earlier offline, right? So you're showing up to be trained, obviously, but that's only half the incentive there.
Right.
Building those relationships. And we're all victim to it these days because everything's all digital, right? our interactions on Facebook or some of the other LinkedIn, some of the other social media groups where, you have that interaction with one another, but you don't have that face to face.
That's right.
And when
and you think, well, I'm going to go, but I'm not going to learn anything new.
Right.
Well, you might not. Maybe not in the actual formal classroom setting. You might not, but I bet you do learn something.
Oh yeah, you absolutely do.
Yeah, and whether that's at dinner with Joe or with Sue on the way down to the Capitol or whatever, you're going to learn something. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's so many. Even just going out to Michigan, which is the other thing. Like I love that you guys do. Right, you tag on the state associations conferences. It's great.
Yeah, it is because
great.
Because you can stay and hear what's going on in South Carolina. Sometimes I feel like the state conferences, we've got some speakers now who travel to every state,
right.
A handful of them, but a lot of the stuff stays within the state.
Right.
So it's good to go and just hear what they're doing and how they're doing things differently. What's the new technology that they're using, and It's neat.
Right, and they're bringing in different speakers that maybe you don't know about too. So you're meeting new people, learning how to do new things. I thought the Michigan, like, who wants to go to Michigan? Mm-hmm. I'm like, I'll go check it out. And it was raining. It was cold.
It was cold.
They're like, oh, beautiful golf course. It was awesome. The golf course.
Oh, it was. Yeah,
looked awesome.
And the hotel was beautiful too.
Really beautiful.
Yeah.
Didn't play around at golf. I mean, it was raining the whole time we were there. But it forced you to interact with the folks that were there, and man, I still to this day I got such great relationships I developed out of there. I did some of my first podcasting there, which was really cool too.
Yeah. These state associations are neat, and we always try to pick right now we're going to Myrtle Beach, and then we go to Arizona, which would be nice as well, and so they're not too bad places to hang out.
So yeah, just being a fly on the wall for your board meeting and listening to like, where are we going to go next year? Okay, well, where is it warm and what time of year do we want to do this? And where is it easy to get to travel for, you obviously want the most people to show up.
So. Oh yeah, that's a tough decision, to be honest, because you've got the whole country and you're bringing people from California to New York, and you've got to find a place, and then you've got to make sure that we don't neglect any, part of the country. Part of the reason we're going out west is we haven't been in a while, and we need to, but we love Arizona, and I think we're going to have a great convention out there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And I was actually just for NALI, I went down to Tampa recently for that, and I made some great connections for people in Arizona. And what's crazy is literally like a week later I get an email like, hey, I need some New York work, can you handle this for me?
Oh yeah.
And what was interesting is the person that was using something came across the board on the NCIS board, and I think they're a member of NCIS, but I'm not really sure. And sometimes what happens is the listserv will go across, and somebody who can handle it. What I always try and do is I just forward it to them. Say, hey, I'm not sure if you saw this, but here, this job is available.
Idea.
It's a great idea. And why it's great is it's coming from Matt. It's like, oh, I know Matt. I'll open his email. If it's coming from the listserv, sometimes it's just like, I don't have time for this. Or they miss it. They don't see it.
Well, the other thing too that I think on these connections that you make at these associations is there is, hey, you may get work from it, right? And I know that's in your mind right now. And a lot of people, it's in their mind. Hey, I've got to be able to pay for these things that I'm doing,
right.
And that's important. But the other thing too is like I said, you make connections with the people that you're going to hire. I can't tell you how many times that has made me look good when I have to go hire somebody in Tulsa or in Kansas City or someplace I would not have known but for an association meeting.
Right.
And I can call him, and he'll call me back at 9:00 at night if he has to, and says, I got it and take care of it next morning for you.
Right.
That just gives you so much more power, marketability, and it's some of the greatest things in the world.
Credibility.
It does.
It's the same thing with the World Association of Detectives. Same thing. I've had things internationally where somebody would call me up and say, like, could you get me something from Rome?
Yeah.
Can you get this done for me? I need, or actually the question that came across was, do you know anyone who speaks Italian? Why, what's going on? Well, a client of mine in New York was on vacation in Rome. They had a car accident. Mm-hmm. So I need someone who speaks Italian that could interact with the police department. And I'm just like, well, I could probably get you investigators like in Rome. Would that be cool? Mm-hmm. And they're like, really? I was like, yeah, I can get you like 5 of them, right? So I went to the board and I said, I have this. I had 5 people to choose from, and we were able to square away my client. Maybe look like $1 million.
Oh yeah. Last week, I'll call out a WAD friend, but David San Martin provided me a background out of Madrid, Spain within days.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to do out of Spain. I love Spain, but sometimes they don't move the fastest. God bless them.
Depends what time of year. If it's August, you can forget about it.
Yeah, exactly. But he did a phenomenal job. And so sometimes, that, like saying, it's just being able to know somebody. When somebody says, "Hey, I need a background in China," you're not going to hang up the phone and say, "Well, I can't help you." Well, we actually have somebody. You know somebody.
China's a little difficult these days.
Yeah, might want to be a little careful about that. Don't mail the report.
Yeah, I actually heard across one of the boards somebody was talking about the difficulty they're having in China right now with that epidemic going around, that nobody's opening their doors. So like the Chinese process servers or their investigators trying to get their work done. A, they're not coming into work, and B, if they're coming to work, and ain't nobody opening the door for anybody.
Yeah, so. It's a very scary situation. See what's going on there.
It's crazy. How do people get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you?
They can go to my website, which is BeardonInvestigations.com. You can call me at 1-800-943-2670, which is our main number, and you can email me at wes@beardononline.com.
Great. Great. I appreciate you taking the time to come out here. And folks, really check out NCIS if you can. I've been a member for a while, and there's definitely value in it. Hopefully you'll get involved. If your state association is not involved as a partner, I suggest you contact your board and have them reach out. It's not that expensive, and the value is really there to do it. So again, thank you for taking the time here. And
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know we were talking about it for a while. I just had to wait for you to get back in town again. So I appreciate you making the time for me and doing that. We'll talk to everybody real soon. So thanks, guys, for tuning in, and catch you on the next episode. Have a good day.
Thanks for checking out this episode. A special thanks to Wes for dropping by the studio while he was in New York City. It was interesting to learn how he operates as both an attorney and an investigator. Keep Beardon Investigative Agency in mind if you have corporate investigations or high net worth investigative assignments you need help with. Wes and his team are available to assist you all over the country. Don't forget to visit NCISS.org and consider becoming a member. It's so important to make sure our industry has a voice in Washington, D.C. when laws are being drafted. This is especially true when it comes to data privacy. And a special thank you to our new sponsor, Crosstracks. Don't forget the offer code PIP20 when you visit their site. Next week, Matt will speak with Florida private investigator Brandon Fortuno about social media investigation ethics. Have a great week, and thanks for tuning in to PI Perspectives.